Back. I don't know if I went to the right place, but I came back. I'm not going to leave you alone, Ellen. Although you could be fine on this on your own with this
I appreciate that.
confidence.
Ellen, Dr. Paycheck, you feel like you're ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll get us started here. Pull up my screen. Welcome, everyone, to Fighting Dragons, addressing trauma through tabletop role-playing games. I'll be your room monitor. I will let the presenters introduce themselves in a few minutes, but before the presentation starts, I'd like to remind attendees of a few important points, and these are the same points you've heard all day long. So bear with me. Oops, I just opened something. Okay, here we go. The session will be 50 minutes. We'll be offering CEs for those who register for that option. Please keep your video on so that we can abide by MBCC's attendance policy. And we'll have captions on and recording the session, so I hope that's okay with you. But please keep this in mind when it comes to making comments. Here to help you if you have any questions or issues. But if you have a question related to the presentation, please express this to the presenters themselves. And with that, thanks for being here, and we'll let them take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to repeat Dr. DePalmer a little bit. Welcome to Fighting Dragons, addressing trauma through TTRPGs. Dr. P and I are very excited to discuss this with you. Let's see if I can. Okay, excellent. Our hope is that by the end of this presentation, you will be able to identify some common terms and definitions that are a big part of TTRPGs, that you will have a basic theoretical understanding of how you can use this as a therapeutic intervention, and that you will understand the efficacy of like role-playing in trauma and with trauma survivors. And finally, that we can discuss future areas of research on this topic. So my name is Ellen. I have been playing D&D since I was a youngin'. And what I found was that it was really helpful for me in building connection with other people. I was a little bit of a weird kid and didn't always know how to talk to people. And tabletop role playing gave me the ability to build some of those skills, experiment a little, and find a community. I am a student at Commonwealth University. I'll be graduating at the end of this year. And I am presenting with Dr. Ashley Paycheck today.
Sorry. Yes, so nice to be here with all of you. I do not have the background in Dungeons and Dragons or really anything like personal experience. I'm here, well, one, because Ellen's amazing and she reached out to me and asked me to collaborate with her. But my interest specifically in this topic is I'm a huge fan of creative interventions. While I think traditional talk therapy is really effective with a lot of clients, I also acknowledge we're not all the same. And there's a lot of different creative therapies to help reach and to have a positive impact on our clients. Also, self-disclosure, my husband's a gamer. And so learning about this was really, really helpful from that perspective of all as well. But I'm really happy to be here. And I think Ellen said my name. I think I forgot. I'm Dr. Ashley Paycheck, and I'm a faculty in this MHC program.
All right, so we have a couple of questions for you. If you guys want to throw into the chat, if you are educators, students, supervisors, how you came to this. And then we also have a mentee. So if you would go to either the site or use this and go ahead and type in, when you think of tabletop role-playing games, what do you think of? I'll give you guys a couple of minutes and I'm going to switch screens so that we can see some of your answers as they come in live. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and switch to that live screen. If anybody needs this, just let me know. Oh, results. This may not be working appropriately.
That's a good idea, Stephanie.
I mean, not always be a word cloud, but could also go in chat maybe if refreshing isn't a go.
Let me just click on this. So that's taking me to the voting. Go back to the home screen. And go to Fighting Dragons. There we go. Results. Okay. Okay. Ooh, I love response, creative fantasy, and authenticity. I think that authenticity is a really great thing that we can bring to tabletop. I think the therapeutic play is also good. I can see that some of us come from different backgrounds. I know you guys in the chat have mentioned some of you have experience with D&D and some of you don't. So to start us all off on the same foot, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give us a couple of definitions. So up on the screen, you'll see a lot of them. Obviously, TTRPGs, it's what we're going to be saying. It's a tabletop role-playing game. It's role-playing, usually with maps and characters, but this can be virtual, it can be in person, and there's a lot of different varieties of game. So a couple of very important terms that you'll hear throughout are GM or DM, and that's the game master. In this case, it would be like the therapist or the clinical interventionist. An NPC is a non-player character. That's any character that the GM is playing. And then the PC are the player characters, and those are the characters that your clients would be playing. So I think an important definition and piece to keep in mind is communal storytelling, because that's what tabletop role-playing really is. It's a bunch of people at a table telling a story together, supporting each other in that story, and finding ways to move it forward as a team. You'll hear different terms when we talk about characters or who your client can play, like alignment or class. And these are just frameworks on how to build a character and like their moral background. I'm also going to give you this brief history. I'm going to try and keep it brief. So role-playing has been around for a very long time. Historically, role-playing was seen in war games. In the 1970s is when we see tabletop role-playing really come into the mainstream. And Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson release Dungeons and Dragons, the original. We also, in the 80s, shortly after this release, see a boom in other tabletop role-playing games. And at the same time, we see the Satanic Panic. And I mention this because the two become kind of intertwined in a way that we can't separate right now. In 1985, a psychiatrist and a concerned parent create Bothered about Dungeons and Dragons. And we see conversations happening in the mental health space about how tabletop role-playing is satanic and there are rituals behind it that are bad and it can lead to suicide. This stigma still exists today. It's part of why we talk about it, and it's part of why, as we move forward in research, understanding that history and education are exceptionally important. 1994 is when we first start to see tabletop role-playing games used for therapeutic interventions or in therapeutic settings. And then in the early 2000s and 2010s, we start to see this resurgence in tabletop role-playing and online role-playing games. The pandemic had a really big impact on the use of virtual role-playing games. And around between 2015 and 2020, we see very popular actors, voice actors, video game actors begin to live stream their games. So in 2015, we see Critical Role, and in 2018, we see Dimension 20. And these two have had a huge impact on how people perceive role-playing and what it can look like in the current zeitgeist. Sorry, I am a little bit nervous, so I am talking a little bit fast. Okay. So the study of tabletop role-playing is really in its infancy right now. We're still seeing a lot of kind of early research projects that focus more on self-evaluation than qualitative or quantitative studies. What we are seeing from the studies and the research that is coming out right now is that tabletop role-playing shows a similar efficacy to that of therapeutic role-playing. We are seeing that it is best used as a tool in conjunction with other modalities and not as a modality itself. And that the creative play has a real healthy impact on people who have experienced trauma. One of the biggest drawbacks to know right now is that only 16% of the big studies, like the meta studies that have come out, showed an effective control group. However, when the studies had that control group, favorable outcomes were seen when tabletop role-playing was used. And the reason that we wanted to highlight the creative expression and how healthy that can be is because it has been found to serve as a protective factor against general psychological difficulties and as a significant predictor of resilience when facing trauma. So play and playfulness enable a resiliency when using the imagination, and how we can see people who have suffered from PTSD use playfulness and imagination to help mitigate some of their symptoms. So there are many, many modalities that can be used in conjunction with tabletop role-playing games. Right now, the two I'm going to highlight are psychodynamic psychotherapy and drama therapy. And the reason that I am highlighting these two is because they have a real connection with how I see and other people see tabletop role-playing. So a GM can have a background in almost any theory, but when we're discussing psychodynamic theory, we're talking about the influence of the unconscious on play and early childhood experiences and how they are presented in play. We're talking about analyzing the past and how it's impact what's happening in the game. Relationships and transference are also a big part of both role-playing and psychodynamic psychotherapy. And that transference can be seen when people at the table, characters, begin to see other characters in those roles that they can recreate in their real life. Parents, friends, family, community. And the drama therapy piece, I feel, is fairly, self-explanatory. You're at a table, you're role-playing. We're using a lot of the experiential therapeutic techniques that come from drama therapy. One of the benefits of this is that it's also accessible. So people with different levels of ability can participate in drama therapy. One of the things that you can think about is, while you need to be able to follow the story, all of your numbers, the abilities that you have, the things that your character can do can be written down in front of you on a sheet. So you can always double check. You don't have to have those things memorized. You can play a tabletop role-playing using something like ASL. It just makes it very accessible for multiple different groups of people. The thing to remember really is that any modality can be used with this, but that tabletop role-playing games or tabletop role-playing must be added in. It's a tool, it's not the modality itself. And it's just really important to kind of remember that, because you can get too caught up in the play piece and forget about the therapeutic piece.
Okay, wonderful. So, and we've kind of already touched on this, and I think I've already heard from the room that a lot of you have experience with this. And so, feel free to kind of jump in and share your experience on this. So as you've probably gathered, tabletop role playing, it's a creative intervention. And like Ellen said, it's usually used in conjunction with another modality, another theory or approach. But there's a lot of great research out there. A lot of it is with children and adolescents. There's less, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to like future areas to conduct research. But it's primarily with children and adolescents. There's been several studies out there. It shows that it can be fun, creative, and just even at its most basic and interactive way to engage a variety of different clients where perhaps the traditional talk therapy approach isn't as effective for them. There's been a lot of different research that shows that it's an effective way of treating social anxiety. It has also showed to help increase confidence in social situations, specifically with different boundaries or increase comfort in making mistakes. So there was a study that talked about how some participants in this year-long study that used Dungeons and Dragons in a group counseling setting, they looked at the perceptions of those who participated in the group. And what they shared was that they felt more comfortable in making mistakes. And I think probably a lot of us can relate to that, feeling like we have to do it just perfect. And so I thought that was a really neat result of that specific example of using Dungeons and Dragons in a group setting. The same participants in that study also said that they felt like a lot of the skills that they practiced in the role plays also were transferable to real world experiences. So they felt like they had improved communication skills where they could advocate, problem solve, resolve conflict, and just so forth. The study that I'm referencing here also emphasized that this creative intervention in the group setting provided a safe and supportive environment for different players or clients to explore and express their emotions, work on personal and interpersonal issues that they were having, and just build, in the very least, social skills. So as you can tell, it's a really neat creative intervention. It has a lot of different benefits. There was a second study that looked at using tabletop role-playing games to help address bullying and different aggressive behaviors in schools. And so this study included 86 French sixth graders. They were randomly assigned to two different groups. One was an empathy training group that utilized role-playing sessions. They did just 3 of them, and they did them for 60 minutes each. And then the control group had 3 different sessions as well, where they watched a video and they talked about school bullying that they had experienced or had observed. So after they were randomly assigned to these 2 groups, they completed a questionnaire that really looked at their levels of empathy, bullying, or aggressive behaviors, both pre and post test. After these, just these 3 sessions that were only an hour long. The results from that short study showed that there was a significant increase in the level of empathy and a significant decrease in bullying and aggressive behaviors for those that participated in that role-playing group. The third study looked at 30 elementary school-age kiddos who were referred either to mental health agencies or to their school counselor for different emotional or behavioral problems. This happened in South Korea. And so as I looked at the literature, I'm wondering, why aren't we, in the United States having, more of these studies? But looking at this particular one with 30 elementary kiddos who are in South Korea, they evenly split the kiddos again in two groups, experimental and control. So 15 kiddos in each group. The experimental group again had 60 minutes per week for 8 weeks. And this is where they had the role playing format paired with narrative therapy. And so the results showed that the students in that experimental group, they reported fewer negative emotions, they demonstrated less aggressive behaviors when compared to that control group. They also reported higher levels of happiness and just fewer like negative emotions. The neat thing with this as well is they did a follow-up a little less than a month later, and they showed that these positive changes maintained even after they weren't continuing in the group. And obviously there needs to be more studies to follow up on that as well. Okay, so there is, like Ellen mentioned, this is really in infancy. And so what's kind of neat is to hear supervisors and practitioners in the field utilizing this. And so hopefully here in a moment, we can hear from all of you. But really, as mentioned before, there's just limited research. This is still a relatively new creative intervention that we're using in some of our sessions. But again, we're seeing through research that there's a decrease in social and other types of anxiety from folks who utilize this creative intervention. They're able to express their feelings and improve communication skills. They have better problem solving, social skills, self-esteem, confidence, decreased feeling of negative emotions, and increase in positive. So I think it's important to note that there's some overlap between some of the things that these previous studies are showing, even if they weren't specific to trauma. And I guess you could kind of talk about some of those bullying groups as trauma as well. But there are some parallels from the research that exists, and there's just not a lot of research quite yet on adult survivors or folks who have experienced trauma in this group setting.
So we wanted to discuss future areas of research, and I think we've highlighted it a couple of times, but one of the very important areas that we see is that of research with adult clients. We've seen a lot with adolescents, and from my perspective, and part of the reason that I wanted to highlight this topic today is because there are a lot of people my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, who played D&D and might find some familiarity and comfort in it when experiencing a traumatic event and when looking for a playful and fun way to begin to manage some symptoms and move forward.
Yeah, and I think this screen, and like Ellen said, we've kind of touched on this. We just really need more research on this. I think specifically looking at adults. I think when I even went looking for different examples, I know Ellen did too, of this creative therapy in a group setting, and I saw more in elementary than anything, like even in the school setting, which was pretty neat to see. But there's just not as much when it comes to our adults. And then also looking at post-pandemic, right? So we know that there were maybe some increases at times, or at least shed more light on some of the mental health needs from the pandemic resulted in that. But this was also a really neat opportunity for this modality to really thrive and grow. So looking at some post-pandemic studies would be really, really helpful. Again, looking at more of that communal storytelling and promoting resiliency and some of those protective factors that we really want to work on growing and building with our clients. There was some literature as well talking about more research with specific mental health needs. Again, I think we kind of talked about the need to have that with folks who've experienced trauma. But there was even a lot of literature out there that says, let's look at this with folks who have different kinds of medical disabilities and how this can really help them navigate through that. Some of the literature also, again, is specific areas for mental health needs is neurodiverse community, or folks with that depression and anxiety. And then again, Ellen has really emphasized, like, we don't just use this solo, we use it in conjunction with theories. And so, yeah, we've talked about narrative therapy and drama therapy, but also looking at other modalities and how we can integrate that and which one maybe has the most positive results. And of course, that could be varied based on, different communities or individuals.
So we wanted to make sure that you all had a little bit of an opportunity to actually see what this looks like in action. And so I want to give you a little bit of a background, all right? So this is from Dimension 20. The character's name is Kristen Applebee's, and she will be having a conversation with her girlfriend, Tracker. The actor who is playing Kristen is named Allie. Allie was raised in a very strict fundamentalist religious society. They have transitioned, came out as a member of the LGBTQIA community, deconstructed, and we're going through a lot of things in their personal life. And what we see is that this began to happen with their character. So the moment that I'm going to play for you is an interaction between the GM and the character. And you get to see how the deconstruction for the character is happening and how the person playing that character is working through what's actually happening in their real lives. All right, I'm going to start playing. If you cannot hear this, please let me know. I believe I shared my sound, but just in case.
You and says, you were talking about this for less than 10 seconds, and I literally watched your whole face change like 3 times in a row as you like figured a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah. I just how we worship yes, question mark. And it's like, we don't know, but the people who believe in Helio get to go to sleep every night feeling safe. I think there's a very real moment for everyone who was raised really religious, and then they say, actually, that's not for me. There's a really scary moment in the dark some night where they're like, God, I wish I had that still, And I think I just had, like a nightmare about that. Did we get a patent or anything, or can we still change the God?
What? Can we still change the God?
Can we still change the God that we're worshiping?
Kristen.
Is there an edit button?
Kristen, you want to edit your God of doubt because you're not sure if doubt is the right thing?
I just think, what if it was like a sun? Like
That's
the sun. Okay.
Look,
I just think, what if there was a whole book written by people who came before us, and they were kind of like, this helps us sleep at night, I'm doubting my doubt. There, I said it. I'm doubting my doubt.
You're reverse engineering your way to the exact thing that you were certain you needed to abandon.
I know, and there's not really a space for me with Helio. I'm aware of that, okay?
You know that Helio would take you back in a second.
Yes, but I would not be happy there. And Helio would be like, you need to marry a nice man. And that would be hard.
I don't want you to do that.
I want to marry you.
What?
I mean in the future. I'm just saying we need a little bit more certainty in our life. So I'm starting that right now, and I would like to marry you one day.
Out of the tube.
One day I would love to marry you. I just think you have it all. And as a matter of fact, I hate that I'm leaving you for this long. And do you want to come?
She starts crying and is like,
I start crying.
She's like, I thought it was really messed up that you didn't ask me, and I just assumed that it was because you wanted me to stay here to run the church.
That's crazy. The church is a question mark. It's like no one needs to run the church.
But no, it does. We've been doing it for months. Kristen, I still believe in the goddess of the moon. I've been helping you with this because my goddess doesn't have any rules about worshiping other gods from other pantheons. She is extremely open about revering other entities and forces. But I have my own personal faith, and I've been trying to help you because the goddess of the moon doesn't like it is also an ancient religion and is sort of established and doesn't need a lot. But like,
Yeah. I think just I made like questioning everything should maybe be more like a practice and not like my deity. I think I just put it in the wrong category. See, it's really, you don't just gracefully you don't just gracefully lose your religion. You just kind of fall out of the Uber and you give them a 1-star review and you know that's gonna tank their career. And you got off at the wrong intersection and now you need to walk because your phone died. You understand?
no, but I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Will you please come with us?
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, I need to go convince everyone else, but I'm sure it'll be easy.
You just can like check in with them. If there's a reason they don't want me, that's fine.
No, that'd be crazy because we would love to have you. I just wasn't sure if you would want to go on like my homework.
No, look, like I dropped out of high school, like,
Yeah.
but like, we should tell like the book club. We should tell like we've gone on a lot of missions. We've been helping a lot of swamps.
I don't not believe in it. I just think it needs a little bit more substance. You know, my belief can't be like that. There is nothing to believe.
Look, I won't lie. Like, the thing I love the most about you is that you're always on an adventure, and the fact that most of it is in your own head is beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean that. I really mean that.
It is like exhausting, but I think I'm gonna get there eventually.
Look,
It's the climb.
I was bitten by a werewolf when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I got my first cleric spells the next time that the full moon happened. All I have to do is spill blood, say the words, believe in the rituals when it happens, and it's extremely primal. Like, my faith is like mostly in my body. It's physical, it's a part of me. And where and how it intersects with my moral self is a matter of like the stories and legends from my faith, but it also has so much flexibility that the questions that my faith can't answer, I can answer like with you guys and like the world and society. Totally. So it works for me. It's like very simple and it's toned down and it's something that I love and it gives me a lot of strength. But like, I would go crazy if I was on the journey you're on. So just like, I want to support you and I want to be here for you and I want to make sure that that there are moments where you get out of your own head.
Yeah, totally. I think that.
Nope. There we go. Okay. So we wanted to show you that whole video for a couple of reasons. One, you get to see the relationship that gets built between the character and the GM. You get to see how the person leads into the character. There's that opportunity for education and discussion and different ways of thinking or looking. We believe that it kind of highlights something that could happen in a therapeutic setting, even though this was in a setting with comedians and actors. So we wanted to open the floor up to you all. We know that some of you have experience with this. We wanted to see if there were any questions or concerns or ideas that this had sparked in you all. Feel free to unmute.
It's always easier to participate via the chat button. Seems like, yeah.
I was watching that and I was really like, I was thinking a lot about like freedom, like the freedom to kind of expand and flex out and try out new things and like not have people be like, no, but also folks to kind of like, oh, oh, really? Like, let's talk about that. Like, tell me why, tell me more. So it's like this really nicely like couchy place to try on different hats and roles and identities and beliefs and just again like really effervescent with freedom.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think so too. And Christina's saying, take back the narrative and regain a sense of control in a less intimidating manner. Sorry, I think I talked over someone. Ellen.
It's just me. You're fine. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna show the rest of the references, and I'm gonna stop sharing so that we can have a little bit more of an open dialogue. So.
And if you want any of these resources, feel free to reach out to Dr. Pytel or myself. We're going to make the recordings if you request and the PowerPoints if you request, but we would need to be emailed. So if there's anything that you want, whether it's references or other presentations you've gone to, just please email one or both of us. That's really helpful, Dr. Kuniak. I know this is really kind of your area too, that to a certain degree that you've dabbled in. Do you want to share that, Dr. Kuniak? You won't steal anyone's thunder.
Yeah, no, I don't want to overstep anyone. This is a great presentation. I'm enjoying not being the one talking.
And I can hear that in your voice. It sounds like you're a little hoarse.
Yeah, you know. But just watch out for those folks. Lawsuits and stuff like that. It's nasty.
One of the folks who I've actually been learning from that Dr. Kuniak pointed me at is a member of the Bodhana group, the Bodhana model of tabletop role playing. And one of the things that they highlighted that I think is really important to highlight is the protective nature of play and the safety of play. And I think, and part of the reason that, again, I was highlighting adults is that I think a lot of people forget that adults can also really benefit from play and having that space. And so I think, again, that video highlights that kind of protectiveness, of that protective piece of play where you get to talk about, you know, that dark night where you want to go back to the safety that you felt before and being able to talk about it as your character, even though it's something that you felt. It gives you a layer of safety. Just reading through the chat really quickly. Yeah, Dr. DePalmer, exactly that distance for the person to talk about hard things.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point too, Christina, is involving the parents. Because I think there's probably a lot of stigma and confusion. Oh, wait, you want my kids to play games? Like, are you really doing counseling? Is therapy really happening? And so I think that's a really component that we can really forget when we work with kiddos, is also doing some psychoeducation for their parents. What has been your response, Christina, usually when you have those conversations with the parents? Are they pretty open to it once they get some good information?
They usually are. So when I introduce a kiddo to the group, you know, we'll talk about it in their individual session, and then I'll pull the parent in and say, okay, this is what it is. You're welcome to tour the D&D room, look at some of the creatures that we use, you know, and the content that will be played out, because some D&D groups are more mature. Some of the violent themes are a little more mature. Some of the identity seeking can be a little bit more mature. So, you know, I coach them on what to expect for their kid and what they're going to get out of that group. And, you know, we dispel the rumors that some parents think D&D is grooming. You know, and satanic and those kind of things. Those things still come up because those were parents from the 80s. So, you know, we dispel those things. I invite them to sit in on like a mini session. We play out a little thing just so that they can kind of see what it's like. And once they see it in person, they're like, okay, this is not what I thought, and they're okay with it.
And not to put you on the spot, Christina, you're sharing a lot in there. And I was reading Dr. DePalmer's response that role playing is such a great medium to try on. Oh, no, she said something above. This also seems stimulating and fun for the clinician. Is that something too that you're enjoying, I mean, I like
Oh
creating.
yeah, yeah.
just for that
I'm a
reason too.
gamer, and it's funny because I was like, when I first started counseling, I went to, lock-in programming. I went through the child play therapy classes. I was like, this is not for me. I don't, going through trauma myself, I don't know how to play on like a regular level. For me, it was always gaming. That's how I worked through my stuff. So I was like, no, I'm gonna speak their language and kind of mine too. And it just kind of evolved into this thing where I started getting a lot more child referrals because of that. So it was like, oh, okay, this is kind of my niche now on accident.
Well, I would love to sometimes see pictures. I teach, I know Dr. Kuniak does as well. I don't think Dr. Tomlin has taught it yet for us, the creative therapies with children and adolescents, which obviously has some parallels to us adults too. Although, as mentioned, we stopped playing for some reason as adults. But I would love to see maybe some pictures, if you wouldn't mind sharing that, or any additional resources that you may have. I think this would be an important addition to that class for our students as well.
I actually had a kid on my caseload that was like pretty nonverbal for a while. He wouldn't talk to anybody. And everybody was like, why, would we have him come to this group? And I was getting a sense like, if he were around accepting peers and kind of put on the spot a little bit at some time to have to make choices that benefit the group and be a part of something, it might work out. And his symptoms like completely reduced after like 6 months in this group. He found his peer group that he fit in with, and he learned how to speak a language.
That was gonna be one of my questions is one of the things I am learning is the power of gaming and how it seems to help individuals with social anxiety, or like going to the like, can you just talk about that if you what you've seen or what you know about that?
Interestingly, one of the studies that we used for the presentation came from the group at Bodana, and their focus was on young adults with social anxiety and generalized anxiety. And they saw that it was fairly effective. There were a couple of folks where it wasn't a good fit with that anxiety, like people whose social anxiety is to the point where they cannot leave the house. It's not going to be super effective for that. And people who have trouble with distinguishing fantasy from reality. But otherwise, what they saw was that people reduce their anxiety. They got to try out and experiment with different interactions. You can role play things like going to the store and what it's like to go to the store and buy goods. You get to practice those small everyday occurrences that can be for some people deeply overwhelming. And they did see reductions in the anxiety kind of across the board. I don't know, Dr. P, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, I think that's everything I read, but I think it's really neat because it just in of itself can really create this safe place where like walls can kind of come down and folks can find a different way of expressing themselves. And I think I heard that when Christina was talking about the kiddo that she was working with that was nonverbal. So I think that's just kind of speaks volumes.
We can also see this as a really helpful tool for grief. So folks who are more aimed at grief, right? You get to work with loss in a meaningful way, but that has a less impact, like direct real world impact. So people can work through the loss of a character or the loss of a non-player character. Conversations can be had. I mean, it's an incredibly versatile tool because you can also see, sometimes you fail. Sometimes the dice don't roll the way you want them to, and building the tolerance with that discomfort and the tolerance of failure, I think is another aspect of this that is very handy. And there's so many different tabletop models, right? So we discussed D&D, you got to see some role play in a D&D setting, but there's games that are being designed now that are specifically meant for therapeutic practice. There's games that are designed specifically for kids. There's like Kids on Bikes is a game that I know that exists out there that people are using for therapy. And there's just like, I think, you know, versatile is the word. There's a lot of different ways you can use it, a lot of different uses for it. And it can be personalized to the clinician in the group. Yeah. Just want to open it up if anybody has any additional questions or thoughts.
Oh, I've been in a lot of presentations today, and if you were in some of the same ones as me, you probably didn't get a potty break. So we'll go ahead and wrap up here in a few minutes. Consider that a gift from us to you, and maybe a few minutes to do some needed self-care. But on behalf of Ellen, we're just really glad that you were here to spend this time and to share. I know I'm already reaching out to some of you for additional resources. I would appreciate anything that you can give so we can integrate it into some of our courses. But hope you have a good, I believe we have 1 hour left in the day. I always have to do the time change since I'm from Colorado. But thank you all for attending, and I hope you enjoy your free few minutes that you have before you go to the next presentation, assuming you go to one. Please reach